Okay, I have been waiting for this to make my predictions video. Yes, it's a little bit cheating because they put the panels out, but it's more fun this way. CitizenCon Schedule has been released with all of the panels in detail, and we're going to go over them today. Now, before we get to these, I'm going to summarize for you, for anybody who just wants to get the quick info and get out. We've got engine development, social features, character features and customization, beyond Pyro, base building and crafting, ships talk, and then Star Citizen 1.0. It should be interesting. Let's break down all the gameplay focused panels, and if you want more detail on this, a lot more detail, I will be doing a full deep dive into this tomorrow on the stream. That is Friday the 11th, which you can attend if you hit the link down below. And I will also have a link to RSVP to our watch party if you want to join us for CitizenCon. We're going to be doing giveaways and bingo and all that kind of stuff. That'll be linked down below too. Anyways, on to the details. A quick disclaimer, just being featured at CitizenCon obviously does not mean the feature is coming anytime soon. It is known. But these demonstrations have become a little bit more indicative of where they're going with the game, much more than they were earlier on when it was very much focused on marketing, though it is still very much a marketing event. So take my predictions with a grain of salt, and really anything else you see before the event. In fact, go ahead and take the event with a grain of salt too, just to be safe. Anyways, Brave New Worlds. This is our first panel. Clearly it's about worlds. This is going to be all about Planetech V5. Planetech is one of the most advanced parts of this game. We've seen some huge leaps in productivity when it comes to making planets in Star Citizen, but they are still largely featureless and pretty empty unless you've got a new update bringing in something like caves or rivers or outposts. While they went from taking 3 months to make 2 moons down to just 1 month to make 3 moons back when they were making ArcWarp and Microtech, they haven't been able to really flex their productivity since Stanton was complete because there haven't been more planets to make. So they've been working ahead on Pyro obviously, but also on other stuff, as we've heard about. What I'm thinking they have to share now is going to be a lot about how these planets and moons can be built with help from machine learning to utilize large-scale features like what can be found on Earth and Luna, as well as increase the resolution of planet data. They do have temperature and humidity data maps, so a planet will make sense at any specific point based on the latitude, longitude, and the closeness to the star that it has. But new planets need to include landmarks and more identifiable features. We've started seeing this in Pyro with those large rock structures, but they can go a lot further with this. And we also need a rework to ArcWarp to allow for more building interiors and add a little bit of vegetation. They want to have actual plants and water on that planet too, not just a bare bones ecumenopolis. Ecumenopolis? I'm also hoping that we learn a little more about dynamic weather during this panel. It has been a stark missing feature from the current planets when we have to just deal with these blanket windstorms that kind of come out of nowhere. And with clouds finally reaching a level in the game in recent updates that kind of matches the things that they've shown us in the past, I'm really hoping we can see some actual storms introduced with those clouds. Make it interesting, make it a little harder to fly. Mainly though, the goal around Planetech V5 is creating a quick process that allows them to create believable worlds that likely combine all of the small elements we've been seeing into a spherical world that can receive factions, missions, and landing zones. I'm talking about outposts, caves, rivers, distribution centers, forward operating bases, fauna, random NPCs, bunkers, and other points of interest. The most important thing here is likely going to be how much gameplay they can actually easily plug into these locations when they put them there. Because an empty planet might be kind of realistic, considering there's not really anything on any planets we know about other than Earth, but it's not super fun for a game. But seeing as this is very much a game engine focused panel, much like last year's when some of these things were introduced, it'll mostly be engine focused. So it might not be that pleasing to people who are looking for the gameplay. Of course, they're using a new name for this, penned as Genesis, it looks like. CIG loves their names, but at least it's not something like Quantum Planet. That would just... A social universe. While server meshing as a technology is looking like it'll expand the player cap in-game, we're still missing a lot of the tools that would make it more enjoyable as an experience. Talking about things like better voice comm systems, org tools, player trading services, the ability to loan out and share items or even ships with other people, and other things that are social. The social universe panel is probably the most ambiguous on this list in my opinion. But I do think it'll be an interesting one considering the MMO nature of the game and the fact that we kind of gotta be a little social. I don't have many references to suggest what features we may see here other than what I've just mentioned, but I do think this will be a very important one for orgs. And it's extremely important given the flaws that server meshing testing that's been going on has started to point out when it comes to services, the locations, and the interactions in the game. Hopefully this has something to say about an economic interaction between players too. Maybe the simulation that drives them? Maybe like a little star sim, maybe? Please? Dressed to Kill, this panel is focused on the characters. Customization of course, but more importantly, character features. The text reads, "From high fashion to dynamic function, discover starwear." It's another... just slap star before everything and we're good. Oh, you want to make suns? Star tech. Exciting new character-focused specialization that lets you define your identity and take on the challenges ahead. This is pretty clearly pointing to the player skill system that was kind of talked about a little bit a couple CitizenCons ago, but then very much hushed up besides I think a couple monthly reports where they talked about it a bit. This is obviously a system that's coming over from Squadron 42, and I think it's meant to make people care more about their characters. Death of a Spaceman is supposed to be something that makes you care about dying, keeping yourself alive, and how long your character lasts. The best way to do that is to make you invest more in your character. Player skills would make sense, but I think they need to be pretty careful about how much they actually include this system, given the game has always kind of been shown as being skill-based on the actual player side and not a character. Now, the game design can always change, and that might be what we hear about here, but I do think this is going to be very divisive, however they go about it. We do know for sure this will affect things like assassinations. We've seen that multiple times, but we don't know just how far they're going to take this. It's supposedly a system like what you'd see in Grand Theft Auto, where the more you do things, the better your character becomes at them. But again, we don't know how far that'll go outside of assassinations. This panel also may talk more about things like different types of armor and clothes and how those affect the player and their ability to do stuff. A long time ago in 2019, back in my day, we heard a lot about how armor and clothing will affect specific parts of your body, the temperature resistance they could have, and also probably the damage resistance, things like radiation protection, and more like that. So this might be factored into this talk as well. And we still haven't really heard much about how flight suits will be used for flying ships instead of armor, or how maybe clothes would be better for meeting certain NPCs to wear. So there's a lot of wiggle room in what they could talk about here, but definitely player skills is going to come up. The panel also is supposed to include a legendary friend from CitizenCon's past. Not sure if this is supposed to be Jax McCleary or somebody else, but it was important enough to put on here, so we'll see. Beyond Pyro. To the fantastic reaches beyond Stanton and Pyro, join us as we explore the exciting new frontiers of the PU. This is pretty obviously going to be a panel about Nyx. Nyx is almost the definitive third system in this game. We already had the landing zone in Levski on the Delamar kind of asteroid thing, which was included in Stanton as the first place we could land before it was taken out when Microtech was added in. Since it was taken out, we know that landing zone Levski has seen updates over time as they've been updating Stanton, so they've kind of kept it up to the standard, but we don't know just how much more they might need to add in terms of factions, missions, and other types of gameplay. So this will likely give us a much better idea of how much work the third system actually needs to get into the game. And skipping over Pyro is probably a good idea this year. Gives a nice breath of fresh air to everybody, and it also emphasizes the fact that systems aren't going to take as long as the Stanton system did. They're not all going to take 7 to 8 years to make. What they've been doing over this time is building the technology that allows them to build systems faster. That's what that first panel is about. And I think that whatever they do show us about Nyx here, while it doesn't mean Nyx is coming anytime soon, hopefully in the first 6 months of next year to be honest, it likely does mean that they're looking even beyond Nyx. And that's kind of the big part of this panel. We know Nyx is coming, but what's after that? Terra? Odin? Magnus? Castra? There are several choices they can make, and I've got my eyes on a couple that I think are pretty likely. We'll talk about those tomorrow at the stream, but I think we should expect probably some closer systems to be talked about in terms of in-engine footage, and then some concepts for the further off systems like Terra. Either way, this kind of stuff will probably also be in the Star Citizen 1.0 discussion that we'll get to in a few minutes. Redacted. At the end of the first day, they will be having a large redacted period. It's about an hour and a half if my scheduling is correct for the event, and it's likely going to be all about Squadron 42. This is the most up in the air part of the whole Star Citizen project, the place where most of the money has begrudgingly been going, and one of the main reasons Star Citizen itself has taken so long. This is likely the beginning of the marketing push that leads to Squadron 42's release, or it's where they tell us that it was all fake and it's not happening, and they take the money and run off stage and we never see them again. Who knows? But we'll likely see a full playthrough of a part of the game here with the commentary from Chris about all the smallest details. If you've watched things like the vertical slice, you'll know just how detailed he likes to get. And I imagine it's going to be more polished than that 2017 vertical slice presentation we got, both in terms of presentation and gameplay, because they've just gotten better at both those things. But there's no knowing what they'll actually show. It'll probably be part of Chapter 1, but it would be nice if it was something we've seen before just for the clear comparison's sake. Either way, this is likely the most important part of CitizenCon besides that 1.0 talk, as this is going to set expectations for the year ahead and what may come from Squadron. Will it be a big boost to hype for the players and the studio, and will it justify almost 8 years of delays since it was supposed to come out? Or will it kind of just be an okay game and we'll all move on to the persistent universe? I think Squadron 42 needs to be a very good game, and this is their chance to show whether or not that's going to happen. Last year they showed some good snippets of the gameplay that looked pretty interesting, but now we need to see a good uncut portion of the game to understand just where it's going to land. This is likely also going to be what is shared and reacted to across the gaming industry, which makes the headlines, what you will find on Reddit and Twitter from outside the Star Citizen community, so they're going to want this part to look good. Day 2, crafting your home. Explore the fundamentals of crafting and base building, including how they combine to enable new opportunities for players and create the future of life amongst the stars. We knew this was coming. Base building is a for sure here at CitizenCon this year, and since it started development in the first quarter of this year, supposedly, it's probably made some decent progress past just the concept and design ideas they had at last CitizenCon. So I'd expect to see some gameplay implementations maybe in the game engine running, not necessarily as an actual played feature, but something that gives us a better idea of how it's supposed to actually look in the game, how it's going to function, the details you can really get down to once you've actually started to playtest this stuff in the engine. And then there's crafting. With crafting, the recipes, which are physicalized in the game, are probably going to act as one of the best things for bartering, trading, discovery, even science-based gameplay, researching recipes. This could be a huge part of the game and offer a lot of player-to-player interaction too. It sounds like a system that might work kind of like Eve, where you have recipes that have certain levels of value based on the item you have, and you can trade and use them amongst yourselves in your org. Suit lockers also may be a focus here. Some talk about how logging on and off could be brought up. Overall, there are just a lot of directions that base building and crafting could go in terms of a presentation. And after last year's design talk and supposedly months of development, I'm expecting it to be much further along this time. Captains of Industry is our ship talk this year. Looking at the ships and vehicles that serve as the primary tools for base building, this is probably going to be a lot about some of the vehicles we saw last year at CitizenCon. One of which looks to be an Argo vehicle, judging from a recent tease, if that is the vehicle that I'm thinking of. But we may also get an update on the Pioneer, the Galaxy, and maybe one more purpose-built vehicle for base building. Honestly, they always have some sort of ship talk, so this should be an interesting one too, but maybe not one that you really care about. The panel will also be revisiting a classic, it says, which could be a number of things we'll have to speculate about on the stream later this week. And there's sure to also be some talk about ship development in general, getting everything updated for engineering, control surfaces, and even the gold standard. The star's my destination. Star Citizen 1.0. Finally. PvP, PvE, non-combat. What type of game is Star Citizen on? It's a very popular question, CIG. If you want answers, join us as we outline a high-level overview of Star Citizen 1.0 and what our intentions are for the universe. This is so important. A lot of people don't know what Star Citizen has been designed to be, let alone what they're trying to design it to be in the future. From cargo interactions to engineering to control surfaces, even to Death of a Spaceman, people have been surprised left and right by new features coming out this year, last year, and probably next year. and CIG needs to lay out what the game is actually supposed to be. I think we'll hear a lot more about death and respawning here, as well as logging in and out, the sandbox aspect of the game, how insurance may work, travel, and what each star system is supposed to offer players. Just a whole bunch of the more high-level stuff that defines who's actually supposed to be interested in Star Citizen, because right now you get everything from people who like the space-based RPGs and single player, to the super hardcore space sim people, to the folks who just want a good MMO. And honestly, I think there are parts of the game that can satisfy all those people, but it's kind of annoying when you don't know exactly how the game is supposed to play when it's finished. Also, we need something to hold them accountable for, right? Whenever they're making changes to the game, we need to be able to look at those changes and say, okay, I can see how that fits into what you guys have said the game is going to be. If they're just going off a bunch of stretch goals that were revealed 10 years ago, it doesn't actually give you a full idea of what's going on. And also, that was 10 years ago. Come on. Each planet in the game, by design, is meant to be a place that people can spend a lot of time in, that you can spend hours at, days at, just getting enough gameplay to satisfy you, rather than having to quantum travel 8 minutes over to the next planet to run a mission. But you wouldn't know that because we don't really get to hear that all that much. And this panel doesn't mean that 1.0 is right around the corner. I'm betting it's still 2 to 3+ years away. But just like the roadmap to server meshing was laid out in 2018 as a long-term goal to strive for, this is going to give players an idea of what the long-term plan of this game is. And in my opinion, that's what CitizenCon should be. It should be a good look of all the major parts of the Persistent Universe development team, what they're doing currently, the engine team, the ships team, the gameplay teams, but then also it should be a look at what the next year is going to be, right? The next 1 to 2 years, as well as a high-level look at what the overall drive towards an end game is. Making sure you're reminding people, this is where we're headed, this is what we're gonna do. That's important. Give us a guide, a roadmap that lets us look at the additions and the changes and the balances you're making and ask, why? So there is a very brief look at the schedule. I don't really usually put out my thoughts on this stuff immediately after I see it, but this is pretty exciting. I'm gonna have a much more in-depth and thought-out response to this and look into all this, and I'll be taking plenty of opinions and ideas from chat as well tomorrow. And then I will make sure to upload the deep dive to Space Tomato to my second channel, which you can go check out. And of course, if you want to join us for the watch party again, that's down below. You can RSVP to that using the link. Come and join us. We're going to be giving away ships and game packages. We will be hosting a bingo game where you can turn in your own bingo card, and whoever gets bingo first gets a copy of the game. And let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to know what you're thinking. I know plenty of people won't trust anything that comes out of these panels and probably don't really care that much about the schedule. But like I said, this still gives us a good idea of where they're headed, even if they don't hit it on time. I think they've probably gotten in around 50% of the stuff that they said at CitizenCon last year. And while they still do have a couple more months left in the year, if they can get 4.0 in, that's still not getting them to all of the things they talked about at CitizenCon last year. But 50 to 70% of the stuff is still nice to see. So you'll get at least some idea. Either way, thank you for dropping in for this quick news update, and I'll see you in the next one.